morning. I am Hazel Allison White, and this is the rest of my crew: Avery Supius, Carly Lerman, Hudson Hassler, and Abby Ratner. Today, we will be discussing turmoil in Russia. We will be talking about issues such as the situation in Ukraine, the overuse of natural resources, the decrease of wealth in the economy, the global energy landscape, and governmental corruption. Avery, why don't you start us off with the basics about the way the country is run?
Russia is a federal republic with a semi-presidential system. It's also a constitutional republic. According to the reader-supported news, Putin's failure to rebuild Russia's industry and infrastructure, official corruption, and growing despair at the lack of opportunity to get ahead is at the root of the current discontent. Even though the majority of Russian citizens are not interested in democracy, there is still a large concern over the lack of free and fair elections. Carly, what do you have to say about the tension between Russia and Ukraine?
Way back, right before World War II, Russia had control over a certain part of Ukraine, Crimea. Then, during World War II, the Nazis took over Crimea and Russia absorbed Ukraine into the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union fell, they were separated once again. In 2013, problems arose in Ukraine and Russia swooped in and told the rebels of Crimea that they were helping them fight against their government. Really, they were trying to take over Crimea and, by extension, the rest of Ukraine. By looking at all the tension between the two governments, it seems as if a war might be started. Hudson, why don't you discuss the overuse of natural resources in Russia?
First of all, I would like to start by saying that Russia ranks 133rd out of 144th in the World Economic Forum's Global Competitiveness Index. This means that though Russia has an abundance of natural resources, they misuse them and don't regulate their consumption very well. Though Russia isn't currently a global threat for overconsumption of natural resources, they could potentially become one if they continue to allow semi-unrestricted use of natural resources such as coal, crude, and petroleum. Abby, why don't you discuss Russia's global landscape with us?
Imagine all your money solely relied on the fact that the temperature was exactly 50 degrees. In Russia, they export energy, and that is their way of life. According to Forbes, Russia's economy relies heavily on its energy sector for economic growth, with an extremely tight correlation between oil prices and the country's GDP. The energy sector pretty much runs the whole economy in this rundown society. When the demand for energy goes down, so will the price. And in theory, the Russian economy too. As our world develops more and more, countries like the US are starting to export their natural gas. If you've noticed the drop in gas prices, that's part of the reason. Your lights, cars, appliances, outlets, planes, and technology run Russia's lights, cars, appliances, outlets, planes, and technology. Now, let me turn it over to Avery.
Russian citizens have come to terms with the abuse of power in government. According to the New York Times, most Russians have grown so accustomed to a certain lawless way of life that they have come to view corruption as Russia's own special way. However, the Russian government doesn't see a problem. But for them, this corruption is a business as usual. It's greatly unfortunate that people around the world don't have the simplicities of life that other nations can enjoy. It makes you see the world clear. Hazel, what do you have to add?
Governmental corruption in Russia is a very significant issue that impacts Russian citizens' everyday lives. Russia is currently ranked 127th out of 144 countries in the amount of government corruption that they have. Though technically this is an improvement, since they were 143rd, only to North Korea, in 2011, this is still very disturbing. Russia was in 90th place, but when Vladimir Putin took over, they dropped back to 126th. Also, studies show that the amount of bribery between government groups and officials has risen quite a lot in the past 5 years. In fact, the average bribe has increased 26% since 2011. Abby, would you like to discuss the methods of solving the corruption problems Russia faces?
Though there are few methods that lead to Russia living free of governmental corruption, some of them are restoring competition, significant anti-corruption actions, and bureaucratic improvements. About restoring competition, some liberal members of the opposition believe that in order to effectively fight corruption, competition must be restored in 5 key spheres: the economy, which must be kept independent from the state, the judiciary, the media, the civil society, and the political sphere. Bureaucratic improvements is another method that includes administrative reforms, such as implementing electronic document management systems and using other methods to optimize interaction between bureaucratic and between state and citizens. This might help to eradicate corruption. Lastly, specific anti-corruption actions are being taken into effect. According to the supporters of this approach, some specific anti-corruption measures which other countries have successfully implemented, such as publicly releasing the income and real estate assists of public officials and executives and imposing high fines, might help to combat corruption in Russia. Hudson, would you like to talk about methods to solve the issues regarding the overconsumption of natural resources?
Solving the problem of overconsumption of natural resources in Russia is actually fairly simple. Really, the government just needs to more closely monitor the private companies that use the most coal, petroleum, and crude and limit their usage. Carly, why don't you discuss the methods of solving Russia's serious issues with Ukraine?
In my opinion, Russia just needs to back out of Ukraine and stay uninvolved. Russia has dug a pretty deep hole for themselves there by making enemies of both the Ukrainian government and then the rebels. It would definitely be best for them to stay out of it from now on. It was an unnecessary war for them to be in the first place. And now that they made it worse, Russia is in trouble with the Ukrainian government and to stay away for a long time. Crimea is not Russia's land to take, so they need to stop trying. Hazel, can you tell us how Russia might solve the problem of decrease in wealth of their economy?
In order for Russia's economic difficulties to end, they need other countries to require their products, mostly oil, more. Other countries around the world have been relying on Russia much less for oil lately, and it's causing Russia's economy to lose lots of money very quickly. President Putin, however, has tried to keep this matter on the down low, not wanting Russia to seem like a weakling in the European Union. Because of this, other countries are less inclined to provide them with financial aid, and Russia is just falling into deeper trouble. If they're going to escape their financial issues, they need to make stronger international bonds and start providing more popular products and resources. Abby, would you like to present us with a solution for Russia's global energy landscape issues?
Well, as I said earlier, Russia relies so heavily on the other nations' need for energy that it's become a problem now that other nations can provide their own energy. Russia needs to find a new way to provide for itself.
This report concludes that while there are some positives occurring in the Russian economy, overall it has grown fragile. Russia's weakness is linked to two related dynamics. First, due to its strong reliance on energy exports, Russia is more affected than other countries by fluctuations in the global economy. Any slowdown in global demand or change in the global energy landscape directly affects Russia's checkbook. Second, the complex interactions between the inflow of energy revenues, the quality of its domestic institutions, and the dynamics of social cohesion have created barriers in the quest to fully develop the country's physical and human resources. This combination could be a key impediment to Russia's future economic development, given that these resources are the country's most important assets. While Russia deals with the disdain from other countries, the situation in Ukraine, and all the governmental corruption, they somewhat maintain the image of a proud nation and they once were. That is surely what we will strive to be again.
And Hudson Hausler signing off.